Ramily, is Maxx Crosby still an option for the Los Angeles Rams? We're going to break it down on today's show because an NFL insider put something out on the topic, and it may not be what you're expecting. Welcome into a brand new episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks. My friends, thank you for watching as always. This is going to be a loaded show. Not only do we have Maxx Crosby discussion to have, we're also going to talk about A.J. Brown because NFL insider Nate Atkins from The Athletic, our Rams beat reporter for their team, he was sounding off on a number of different trade rumors and possibilities for the Rams. So we're going to break all that down, but we've also got an update on Puka Nacua's situation to discuss as well on the top of today's show. But before we get into all that, I got to let you guys know, if anything happens, if a trade happens of any kind, and I do have this sneaking suspicion that Les Snead ain't quite done yet, if you guys know what I'm saying, I think there's something else up his sleeve. Make sure you are subscribed because the minute that happens, we are going to cover it. We covered that Trent McDuffie trade. We raced into the office. It was snowing that day in Dallas, but nothing stops the Rams Report. We trudged in through the snow to get a video out for you guys. Every single time there is Rams news, every single time there's something you need to know around this team, we have got you covered. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And let's get into our run of show today. We're going to start with an update on Puka Nacua, and then we're going to get into everything that Nate Atkins had for us, which kind of breaks down into three different chunks, if I'm going to be honest with you. The first is how Ty Simpson plays into the Rams' ability to make a trade. The second is, to give you a little bit of a spoiler, we're going to close the book on an existing rumor that's been kind of around this team for a little while, and we're going to turn over to a new book, you might say, one we're revisiting from earlier this offseason. But let's get started with the Puka situation. So this came out earlier today, or maybe even last night. I think it was over the last 12 hours, we'll say, around Puka Nacua's situation. USA Today spoke to the district attorney's office in the California area and have discovered a new bit of information. No charges have yet been filed against Puka, and it seems that the case may be heading rather towards charges, but instead to a pretrial diversion path. What that would mean is it would have Puka in counseling, in some sort of community service. There's a number of different paths that can go down. It's hard to say exactly what it might look like because that's at the determination of the judge in every specific instance. But pretrial diversion essentially means that Puka Nacua would avoid formal charges in the matter. So that good news for Puka Nacua as this situation continues to progress. We will keep you updated on all of the news you need to know. But let's roll in to the rumors from Nate Atkins. Let's get started with how Ty Simpson factors into this discussion. One of the key reasons the Rams decided to take a quarterback in the first round rather than wait until next year, a team source explained, is that they don't want to have to protect their 2027 draft picks in trades as they make this Super Bowl push. The team is always hunting for upgrades, so when a player it could use is on the trade block, it's safe to assume the Rams will at least have conversations about it. And this is something we've talked about before. The smart planning around drafting Ty Simpson when they did allows the Rams to be aggressive. It allows them to pursue their goals in 2026. It is so much more of a win now move than I think anybody gives it credit for. And we're going to break down exactly how on today's show. But first, I've got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video. And guys, that's America's #1 sports picks app, Prize Picks. If you guys love daily fantasy sports or you just want to add more excitement to watching sports, you've got to try out Prize Picks. And it's a great time to get started too. With the NBA playoffs underway and the baseball season in full swing, pun intended, of course, there's no better place to get in on all that action than Prize Picks. And it's never been easier to play than it is with Prize Picks. All you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players and select more or less on their stat projections. Whether you're picking from points, assists, rebounds, or hits, home runs, or strikeouts, they've got plenty of options options from all your favorite sports. Plus, PrizePicks has awesome social features that allow you to easily tailor fade your friends or your favorite creators, including me and producer Mike. I'm on there at Jackson Durham with no spaces. He's Mike Jaraputo with no spaces. And you guys can drop a follow on both of us and see all of our latest lineups, including this one that I've got going with PrizePicks' season-long picks. I went with the less on Fernando Mendoza, the less on Jeremiah Love, and the more on Jordan Tyson. So you guys can tail me on this lineup. You can fade me on this lineup. Whatever you do, just do it with our friends at PrizePicks. And if you're new to PrizePicks, make sure you use our promo code. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with PrizePicks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description. Thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to our rumors discussion here, because Nate Atkins also sounded off on the A.J. Brown trade rumors as well. And we'll talk about that in 1 minute, but can we circle back to Ty Simpson for 1 second so I can close out on that discussion? Because I think the last note that I want to have here on this discussion, like we talked about before we went to PrizePicks, this move to draft Ty Simpson when you did in 2026 frees up the 2027 draft capital. Of course, you've already moved off the third. Of course, the third is no longer in play, but you still have a first and a second. Those are incredibly valuable premium picks that if you had not drafted Ty Simpson would be much more important to you as a team. Those might be the picks, the only shots you have at your franchise quarterback in a class that is deep, but who knows if any of the quarterbacks that are expected to be out in the 2026 draft class will A, be there, or B, be available at the tail end of the first round where you expect to be. This, again, to iterate it on it one more time, was smart planning on the part of Les Snead and Sean McVay, taking a shot on a quarterback when they knew they had a chance to get one that they liked at 13th overall with a pick they didn't expect to have. They took their opportunity there. Now they're free to use their 2027 draft capital however they may choose. Is that A.J. Brown? I don't know. Neither does Nate Atkins. Here's what he had to say on that. I'm hearing that discussions are over at this point. I never say never with the Rams and potential big moves, but the expectation in league circles for some time has been that Brown will wind up with the New England Patriots. And this is exactly what we've been talking about. Again, I know during the mock draft that we did live, we made a silly trade for A.J. Brown. We made that move happen. It was never very realistic at the end of the day. The Rams acquiring A.J. Brown earlier this offseason, maybe it made a little bit more sense. Maybe it before the Patriots had kind of forced their way into it. But I think at the end of the day, they've got that one lockdown. It's just not surprising that we're not going to be serious players in this discussion because this discussion seems to be over at this point. It seems like the Patriots have got him. I would have liked it to happen. I know a lot of you guys were averse to the idea of trading for A.J. Brown. A lot of you guys didn't want to make the move. But this would have been your receiver too, alongside Puka for a long time. Devontae's in this room for one more year, and we don't know what the future looks like after that. He might retire. Matthew Stafford might retire. If we go out and do what we want to do next season, we go out and win a Super Bowl, I do think both of those guys go. And had you traded for A.J. Brown, that's your running mate for Puka Nacua for a number of years in a Ty Simpson future. And that's a great setup for success for your young quarterback. That's exactly what I think the Rams wanted to be capable of doing in a lot of ways, is setting up Ty Simpson for success. But I do think there's other ways that we can take a shot on a receiver 3 that can set up Ty for success, whether that's in the draft next season or a different trade for one of the top 2 picks that we have, the first or the second, which that's something that Nate Atkins also spoke on. The idea that the Rams may make a different move to still address that third receiver spot. Here's what he had to say. Other players who hit the trade block will be worth a look. It's quieter right now with the names such as Kayshon Boutte of the Patriots out there. And yes, it is Boutte. It is not Boutte. That calculus will change come the trade deadline in October when some struggling teams will look to cut their losses and plan for the future. That's the window the Rams are likely gearing up for, as the time between now and then will also bring their needs more into focus, such as the third wide receiver spot. It'll be interesting to see if they're willing to make a move for a receiver at that point. If Adams and Nacua are healthy and playing great, as the biggest need is probably to protect against either going down, and that can't happen much after the trade deadline passes. Agreed. Again, I was talking about this earlier with none other than, funnily enough, our Patriots Today host, Brett Alper. The idea that if the Rams are going to make a move, it most likely happens around the trade deadline to address a need that comes up. Because remember, we've talked about the idea that the Rams entered the 2026 draft feeling like they have no needs. But if they're proven wrong, I think they see a safety valve option at the trade deadline to make a move here. And one of their options might be Kayshon Boutte. Exactly what Nate Atkins was talking about. If the Patriots make a move here for A.J. Brown and they just signed Romeo Doubs, what's Boutte's role in the offense for the Patriots in 2026? I don't really know. He had a significant one last season. It was a breakout year for him, going for nearly 600 yards. But at the end of the day, if you bring in two options who are making big time money, the expectation is that the majority of the volume is going to go to them. And moving off of Boutte might make some sense considering he's going to need a new payday very soon as well. He could be a very suitable third option for the Rams. Of course, he's not the receiver that A.J. Brown is. He's not a 1,000-yard guy, but he is perfectly capable of playing the third receiver role for this Rams team, especially if we're going to lean into 13 personnel and keep that third receiver off the field the majority of the time. As is Josh Downs. I don't know how willing the Indianapolis Colts would be to move off of Josh Downs at this point, considering they moved off of Michael Pittman Jr. this offseason. That receiver room is a little bit more thin, but Downs could absolutely be an interesting option here. Fourth-year receiver, out of Ohio State. His third year of production was pretty solid. That second year, going back to 2024, you saw some really good potential with him going for 800 yards, 1,500 yards in his first two seasons in the league. Again, not a guy who's going to go for 1,000 for you, not a guy who's going to take over this offense, although he would be playing with the best quarterback of his entire career, bar none, not even really close, with all the revolving door of guys he's seen in just a few years in Indianapolis compared to Matthew Stafford, but another guy who's perfectly capable of playing that role. And then lastly, maybe my favorite option, and someone who I really do think will be available here, Marvin Mims from the Denver Broncos. Obviously, the Jalen Waddle trade shrinking his role in that Broncos offense. He also brings a ton of special teams value as well. He saw his role shrink a little bit last season as well. You go back through his years in Denver. He's always been an incredible special teamer, a solid receiver as well. But again, a guy who's perfectly capable of playing that third receiver role and kind of fits exactly what the Rams have been trying to bring into their offense over the last couple seasons as far as receiver goes, what they were hoping to get out of Tutu Atwell, someone who could stretch the field for them. I think Mims can absolutely do that. That's been his primary role in Denver over the last couple years. Plus, he's a massive upgrade over Xavier Smith in the punt returner department, which, again, we've had that conversation. We just don't have a solid option there right now. But let me know, of these three receivers, who do you want? Give me a KB for Kayshon Boutte. Give me a JD for Josh Downs and an MM for Marvin Mims. And let's round out today's show with a little discussion on Maxx Crosby, as Nate Atkins rounded out his article with this quote here. I'd also keep an eye on Maxx Crosby. He seems to have mended things with the Las Vegas Raiders after the trade to the Baltimore Ravens was reversed, but the organization's approach could change if the Raiders hit another tough start to a season. This has been the headline from this article. It's the headline on today's video. I'm not going to lie to you guys. At this point, I am hard-pressed to see the Raiders moving on from Maxx Crosby. That's my take on it. I look at that situation. Obviously, they made a trade for him with the Ravens, but it feels like fences mended in the process of that trade being undone. Exactly what Nate Atkins said. It feels like Maxx Crosby realized in doing that, I don't want to leave. I want to be in Vegas. I want to see this through. I want to get this team back to competitive as quickly as possible. But I did talk to Mitchell Renz, who hosts our Raiders channel, because in my opinion, that guy, He knows more about the Raiders than Nate Atkins. He definitely knows more about the Raiders than me. So here was his take. He said if the Raiders are struggling around the deadline, they could look to move him since they wouldn't be likely to invest in a new contract. The Raiders would likely want a 2027 first and Byron Young in exchange. That's a lot, is it not, my friends? That's a lot to go get Maxx Crosby, especially when you consider the other part of this, right? Like, Byron Young, moving off of him, that might be something we've got to do anyway, even if it isn't for Maxx Crosby. The contract situation there, plus all the other 2023 candidates, we'll have more of that conversation. We've talked about it a little bit, but again, there's not enough pie to go around for everybody, to steal a Jerry Jones line. But if you bring in Maxx Crosby, you kind of have the same problem, just with different names, and now the guy is older and more expensive. Crosby's going to want $40 million, most likely, on his next deal. That's a big part of why the Raiders looked to move on in the first place, is because they feel like they're rebuilding. They felt like Crosby didn't want to be there anymore, and if he didn't want to be there, they don't want to pay him $40 million to be on a team he's not that excited about being a part of. And I go back to the Nate Atkins. This just feels like speculation, to be honest with you. Like, I think if you talk to Nate, and I'm not saying that to dig at Nate Atkins, by the way. We speculate on this show all the time. We just speculated about guys that might be available at the deadline. There's nothing wrong with speculating, but it's different than reporting something. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't have told you guys I'm reporting that Kayshon Boutte is a target for the Rams at the deadline. I'm just speculating that that might be the case. And I think that's exactly what Nate Atkins is doing here. Rather than reporting, hey, Maxx Crosby is somebody that the Rams are targeting, he's just kind of throwing it out there in the water. So let me throw it at you. Do you think the Raiders would trade Maxx Crosby after a slow start? Let me know in the comments below. Nate and I just a little off kilter on this. Who do you agree with here, me or Nate? Are the Raiders moving Maxx Crosby at the deadline? Let me know what you think. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in on today's episode of the Rams Report by Chat Sports. We always appreciate your time. And as always, let's go Rams.